Hey guys, we're gonna get started in just a minute. We'll let some other folks join. Can everybody hear me? Anybody who's on live? Just write in the chat if you would, and just let me know that you can hear me okay. Great, thanks, Eric. Let's wait one more minute. All right, you want to get started? Thanks for joining. I'm Jim Parker, owner of iDRY. We're here in Barre, Vermont in our factory where we build all of our kilns from scratch. And today we're going to do a little walk around of the iDRY AIRFire, which is our purpose-built firewood kiln. So let's take a look. First of all, before we get started, I do want to just remind us why we dry wood. It's pretty obvious to everybody here because this is what we do, but for lumber, furniture, wood that's used for indoor applications, we usually dry wood for stability and to disinfect it from any insects. But obviously for firewood, we don't care about that so much. It's really all about making it energy efficient. So when we burn it to heat our homes, we get more BTUs and more energy into the home and less of that energy in the combustion process going to just drying out the wood that we're trying to use for fuel. But we're also trying to kill bugs. So a lot of the applications for firewood for our kiln are in retail. That is people buying smaller bundles of firewood for their homes, for restaurants, especially pizza ovens. These are applications where people are willing to pay more per cord of firewood to get a cleaner, drier product that is also free of insects. So we have heat treated this wood. We've met the USDA standards for heat treating lumber and firewood, which means getting the core of the wood above 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius for more than an hour, which means we've also got it dry. So it's very, very dry. And that, like I said before, more of the energy from the combustion process from burning wood, burning really the gases that come out of this wood, will go into the heating process and not so much into the drying process. So you can see the whole thing, right? Brian Kingsbury, our engineering manager, is holding the camera today. As with all of our products, he helped design this. And you can see all we've done here is adapt to a shipping container. Our kiln, which is the kind of the guts of our process. It's the fan, it's the heating, and it's the venting, also the sensors for temperature and humidity, and the control, which in firewood drying, frankly, the control part of the process is not quite as important. We're just trying to crank the temperature up, put as many BTUs into the process, as much energy in as we can to get the water out as quickly as you possibly can. But this is the only firewood kiln on the market that is purpose-built for drying firewood, but that can also be quickly switch to drying lumber. So a lot of our customers have a firewood business, they have a processor, and they also have a sawmill, and they're cutting lumber on the side. And maybe it's seasonal for their firewood right around this time of year, right? It's September now here in Vermont, it's starting to get pretty cold, and everybody's looking for firewood. But it also allows them to dry firewood year round, so they can continue to process even when it's really too cold outside to season wood properly outside. They can keep drying cordwood throughout the year, and then once in a while dry a load of lumber, or switch their business and entirely dry lumber, both hardwood and softwood, very safely and very efficiently. So it's a really special machine. What we have is a 20-foot side load shipping container, which I'll show you in a minute. This and then our kiln unit bolted onto the end of it, and we, for the firewood processor, firewood kiln, when we add this, we add this flange and connection for our insulated ducting. And during firewood drying, we have this baffle open. For lumber drying, we simply have it closed. And then I don't know if you can see on top, but then for firewood kilns, we add the additional vent because we are getting a lot of moisture coming out of this wood very fast. In addition to that, our standard drying unit, the iDRY Air, has its own vents. These are fully automated. They modulate open and close. Depending on the air flow, one is always a vent and one is always an intake, and that's how we vent some of the moisture out. So for lumber drying, this is all we need. These are both closed for this extra heat and this extra venting, and we just modulate these vents and intake for letting the moisture out. This is a conventional kiln type process. We have airflow, which we'll show you in a minute, that's inside of this box. We have a really big, powerful fan moving a lot of feet per minute of air. And then we pick up heat off of either, for firewood, the gas burner, or electric heating elements that are installed inside of here. That heat gets carried through either the pile of lumber, or in this case, the baskets of cordwood, and recirculates in a horizontal type way, comes back and that moisture is vented out, gets reheated, and then around and around it goes. It's very, very simple and super reliable. This whole unit is meant to be installed outside. I think this is also a really unique part of our firewood kiln, is it doesn't require hardly anything for installation. So like I said, it's a 20-foot standard side load shipping container. It really practically could be installed in the dirt. You could take this off the trailer. This is installed, this is inside of the box when it's shipped. This is already installed. So you could take this off the trailer, coming right from our factory, drop it in the dirt, connect one power connection. It's 208 to 240 volt, single phase, 60 amp power connection, one here, your licensed electrician should do, but it's very, very simple. And then we have our one extension cord for turning on and off the gas burner. Plug in your gas burner into this flange connection, connect to gas, and you're done. So if you're ready to go with your power drop and your gas, you could easily take this off the truck with a crane or a big forklift, set it in the dirt, plug it in, and be loading it with firewood the same day you get the kiln. I think there's nothing else in the world that's that simple. And then once you have this fired up, it's just a flip of the power switch. And like all of our kilns, our smallest to our largest kiln, all of our kilns have a really high quality industrial control system. It's a PLC, industrial PLC program, base, a industrial color touchscreen. Brian has programmed and engineered all this in-house, and it's very, very simple to use. Literally start and stop. We have this set to firewood currently, and so the settings are in there. We haven't been running this kiln. It's a production unit about ready to ship out, so it's at room temperature right now, and our current humidity, which has been pretty dry here in Vermont lately. We can also set the settings manually if we want to set the air temperature and the humidity. For drying firewood, 25% humidity is as low as you really need to go. That's relative humidity, so that's the air humidity, not the wood humidity. But that will easily get you down to below 20% moisture in the core of the firewood. We also have a process graph so you can see what's been going on. This is really useful if you're trying to prove to your customer or maybe the USDA inspector, somebody, that we have actually reached really a minimum of 160 degree air temperature. Usually people for firewood are drying even hotter than that. But you really won't have properly dry firewood and disinfected firewood until we get the core of that wood up to 140 degrees, which means getting the kiln temperature above 160. But you can see that all here. We have proof that it reached that. We have a kiln report if you need that. And then if you're drying firewood and moving it across county lines or state lines, where there's an inspector, somebody wants to see that you have achieved that 140 degree core temperature, we also sell a wireless wood core probes. You just drill a hole in a piece of cordwood, throw it in the kiln, start it up, and it goes for the ride and collects that temperature data, so you can tell them that for sure inside this cordwood we reached the required temperatures. That's pretty much the control. Firewood, very simple, like I said. But if you're also curious about drying lumber, also very simple. You would literally set it to either softwood or hardwood and press start. The temperature and venting and airflow is all controlled automatically. So really, 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 really simple. By the way, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, and then we'll try to address them in a little bit. We appreciate you taking some time from your lunch or whatever else you're doing, your hard work to see us today. And if we don't get to all your questions, we will get to them later. So you could see side load 20-foot container. You certainly could do this on a end load 20-foot shipping container, but I'm gonna show you today why we love side load containers, even though they're a little bit more expensive and a little bit harder to find. By the way, you can buy just these components, use your own container, and this is really simple to install yourself and spray foam or insulate your container yourself. But we do this all the time, right? We have this great big building and crane and a paint booth, so we buy these single-use containers. They go through our paint booth. We have a big, gigantic paint booth. They get sprayed. Then they're spray foamed inside with several inches of high temperature closed cell spray foam. And then we, of course, bolt on our dryer unit, put in our flanges for the vents and the additional heating. And so this is all ready to go. But once you're set in the dirt and ready to dry, you can open these side loads containers completely up, which is really the way to go. Either whether you're drying lumber or you're drying firewood, forget about having tracks and trolleys. That all just adds expense and frustration trying to move wood in and out of these boxes. So side load container, super easy. All of our, if you buy the complete firewood unit from us, it includes 10 baskets. We've tried a lot of different baskets. We really like these. I think they're a good price point. They'll last plenty long enough, and they fit really well into this box. So we get pretty good utilization. What do you say, Brian? Like 3 cords-ish, depending on how well you fill the baskets. And they can be forklift loaded right into the side. Super simple. All of these baskets are hinged, so you have a few latches here, and once you get these out, you can remove these latches, and I'll show you. You can remove these latches, and the whole front of the basket opens up, so you can pour out all that dry firewood, and then latch it back up and put it near your processor so you can be loading. Pretty simple. You can see where our kiln unit is bolted onto the side. So we've already cut the hole. We frame it out with some pressure treated lumber, and then there's some fasteners on the other side. I can show you where this literally just gets screwed to the side of the container, and then everything's spray foamed. Again, this is providing our airflow, heating and venting, and the sensors for temperature and humidity. And then down here you have the additional port that we've made for the indirect gas fired heater. And then up in that corner would be the vent. A little bit less important for firewood than lumber, but also when we build this for you, we install, you should be able to see it up there, we install a really simple baffle. So this is just an EPDM rubber bolted to the ceiling, acting kind of like a curtain. Like I said, mostly for lumber, it's really important to properly baffle, meaning block the airflow so that the air goes through the stickered pile of lumber and not around it or over the top of it. So that just drops down on top of a pile of wood. If you were drying lumber, let's say a couple of 8-foot packs of lumber and you had some space, you would want to block this space so that the air is not blowing around your pile of lumber. But pretty simple. Again, the airflow is coming out of our unit, down the side. It has nowhere else to go but through here, as best it can, right? We have loosely piled cordwood in these baskets. There's not a lot of spaces, but there's enough for air to kind of flow around these piles of cordwood, work its way through. Eventually you get this whole mass of wood heated up, water starts to come out. And then the fan automatically reverses, blows down the other side and through the pile and back around, picking up moisture, taking it out the vent. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit because, yeah, we're drying firewood. It's not lumber. We're not drying tabletop slabs. In this case, this is not furniture grade material, clearly. But cordwood is still a bit of a challenge because although we don't care about the drying quality from a splitting, cracking, warping standpoint, it's still a big, heavy, thick chunk of wood. And getting the free water, that's the water down to about 25 to 30% moisture content, getting that free water out of this thick piece is actually pretty hard. Water has to move from the inside of this wood to the outside through the cellular structure and the fibers of this wood, and it just takes some time. So we have done a lot of work. Well, we've been drying wood for a really long time, building kilns for drying all sorts of wood. And one thing we know is that you can only dry so fast. There's really no point in heating this wood or trying to dry it any faster than the water can migrate from the inside to the outside. If you try to go even faster, then what happens is you just dry the outside shell of this piece, and it reaches below fiber saturation point. So it's let's say it gets down to 10 or so. It locks up the grain and the fibers of that shell, case hardening this wood, making it really hard for the water to move from the outside of the shell and then out. So yes, we want to dry cordwood as fast as we can, but there's a definite point of diminishing returns where you really shouldn't try to go any faster, or you're just wasting money and fuel. So we found that this setup is optimal around 3 days for drying cordwood. Again, I think trying to go any faster than that, you're just losing money, and you're certainly then not going to make money in the firewood business. Drying slower would be cheaper, right? If you want to If you want to spend a little bit less money, you could stretch that drying time out closer to a week. But then, of course, you're not turning over your load so fast either. And so there's a bit of a balance. You have a lot of flexibility with this kiln. Um, our opinion is load these baskets, pack jam full as much as you can. If you can have this off your processor in a pile somewhere air drying first, that's a good way to save yourself some energy. And when you're trying to make money drying cordwood, it's all about trying to save energy and go fast as practically possible. I don't know if there's any questions so far, Brian.
Yeah, there's a few. Do you remember off the top of your head the amount of gas it uses? I don't remember.
I do have, yeah, I have that number somewhere. So the unit is a 200,000 BTU an hour gas indirect fired burner. So you can calculate that, basically how many gallons that equates to. It's a little bit hard to say for sure because that burner is not necessarily on all the time. Basically, it's going to heat up this whole process to say 180 degrees. And once it's at that temperature, there's no point in adding more heat, so the gas burner turns off. It's going to depend on whether it's wintertime, is this wood frozen, if it came right off your processor, or if it's been sitting out all summer. The amount of fuel is going to differ. We do have on the web page that you're currently watching this on, if you scroll down the web page from this video, towards the bottom there's a calculator that we made. And I think that's a pretty fair judgment of what you're going to do for time and speed and energy and cost. We also don't know what you're paying per gallon of propane, for instance, or per kilowatt hour of electricity. So you can input that into that little calculator, slide some things around. It's kind of fun, and you'll see if you're going to make any money drying firewood. Again, I will say, if you're just trying to sell cordwood seasoned, this is not for you. If you want to dry, what seems to be going on right now, frankly, is we're selling a lot of firewood kilns. And I think it's because people are finding that the markets are willing to pay a couple $100s more per cord if their wood is properly dried. Homeowners are willing to pay, and of course restaurants are willing to pay. It is a better fuel. I've been heating my home for 20 years primarily with cordwood, but I found somebody here in Vermont years ago, is probably one of the first people to really get into kiln drying firewood. And that's what I started with. And I would never do it any other way because I can store this wood in my house. I have a finished garage, so I don't really want to be bringing bugs into that environment. And then I can load up my little wood stove insert, maybe 1 or 2 pieces of fat wood or some kind of fire starter, and that thing is burst into flames, and it is heating at my house so efficiently and so hot. It's a relatively efficient home, but I'm just filling this small wood insert a couple of times a day to keep my house nice and warm and cozy. Everybody's happy. So once you've done that, I mean, what is it really for a couple $100s more for a cord? I buy 2 cords a year to heat my house in Vermont. It's -20 in the wintertime. So if it's a couple $100s more per cord, I think it's worth it. And it's up to you guys to decide if you have a market that thinks the same way, and if they're willing to pay a little bit more to have it properly kiln dried. Do your own research, or maybe you already know. If you know you can get that extra dollar for kiln dried firewood, this is by far the cheapest, easiest, simplest solution for getting wood dried really well. So I know I kind of danced around that, the answer to that question, but it's a tricky one. Use the calculator on the website.
So Jim, without having wood in here as a visual aid,
sure,
it's a little hard to understand the airflow.
Okay, yeah.
Can you explain better how our system pushes air?
So somebody's asking about airflow. So it's a little bit hard to see because it's blocked, but on the other side of this wall here is our fan. And we have a fan in there about this big. that is designed to push a lot of air, and a big kiln duty fan motor. Not,
In a minute, we'll turn it on.
yeah, we'll turn it on. You're going to see. It's not a regular electric motor. It's a kiln duty fan motor. It's specifically designed for this application, for these high temperatures and corrosive humid environments. So when we switch that on here in a minute, and then it's going to get loud, so I'll explain it now. A lot of air is going to come out of this space. Or if the fan's blowing that way, it'll come out of that space. That air flows down the side, right? Fills in this airspace between the wall and your basket, or if it's a pile of lumber, and it pressurizes this area, basically, right? The air comes screaming down into this space. It has nowhere to go but this way. So it has to move through your lumber to the other side where the fan is sucking, right? It's drawing air from that side. So it's pulled down the other side, returns to the other side of the fan, dumps some moisture, gets reheated, and then comes back around and reheats. And like I said, about every hour, that stops and reverses, and that same fan is designed to work one direction just as well as the other direction. So it just starts circulating air horizontally that way. So let's switch it on, you can see. It's gonna get loud and windy. We don't have gas plugged in here right now, but Brian, if you wanna come over here, you can see the extreme simplicity of drying the kiln, drying wood with this kiln. We press the start button, the fan is going forward. You can already hear it ramping up. The vents are opening. If we had gas to our heater, it would be heating, and now it's going to be really loud. We are... I can't hear anything. Maybe you can hear me a little bit better now, but there we are, screaming heat and airflow around this pile of wood like crazy. We are not messing around with airflow and heating in our kilns. But I think I should take a minute to show you something. So we're in firewood mode right now. The temperature is just room temperature because we got this thing wide open, obviously. That's gonna heat up pretty quick. Humidity would come down. If we were drying lumber, I could switch it to lumber mode, or we could manually slow down this fan. So if we wanted to dry 4/4 red oak, we can slow the fan down. You can hear it's still on. We're still heating. We're still circulating air, but at a much lower fan speed. So again, only firewood kiln in the world that can blast this cordwood with heat, and then we can slow it down to a nice gentle breeze for drying something like oak, which is a much more sensitive hardwood to dry if you're trying to make furniture, flooring, or millwork, or cabinets, or whatever. Because we're using, even though we have a single phase system here, because we're using variable frequency drives on the motor, we can reverse this fan, we can speed it up, we can slow it down. This is a very industrial process that we've packaged into something that is affordable for small business and super rugged and meant to be outside and installed in the dirt. Really simple.
There's one more firewood feature, Jim.
Yeah.
They might be interested to see.
Brian's going to show you some more of his magic.
So we're using gas and electric.
Right.
And you can actually decide how much electric and obviously how much gas you want to use. If you want to use solely all gas, turn the electrics off.
Great.
But if you want to do a little bit of a balance, you can use a low amount of electric, which would use less gas.
Awesome.
So you can a medium amount. So you can choose how much electric.
Yeah. Where do you want to spend your money?
Where do you want to spend your money?
Yep.
And that's fully adjustable.
Awesome. And we have about, 6 kilowatts of electric heater?
Yep.
So that's quite a bit. I mean, plenty of heat for drying lumber. People dry firewood with just that, without the gas, right? It's closer to maybe, what, 7 to 10 days if you wanted to forget about all the gas completely and just use electric. Not bad. I'm not sure if that would make for a real firewood business, that kind of turnover, but if you're doing it once in a while, that'd be awesome. Yeah, that's a really nice feature. Again, 208 to 240 volt, which everybody has. There's a lot of controversy out there about in the internet land about voltage, but in the United States, actually all over the world, everybody has 208 volt to 240 volt. It's somewhere in that range. You can test it yourself if you want, but this is a single phase connection, 60 amp breaker connection. We aren't using all those 60 amps, but that's the breaker size, and that powers everything. Super simple.
I think that's about our time.
Great. We really appreciate everybody taking the time to look at this kiln. We're here to answer any questions. You can put them in the comments, or better yet, text us, email us, call us, and we'll be here to talk to you about it. Thank you so much for joining us.